Yo, what's going on? So Honkai Impact 3rd Part 2 has been out for a bit now and kind of fell off the face of the earth. Just dropping some quick thoughts as someone who's been playing for a while. There was a time where I could say with a straight face that this game is better than Genshin and was the best and has the best story I've ever read in a gacha period. Well, that time is long gone and this game is kind of a mess at the moment. Part 2 could have been a really nice soft reboot or continuation of Part 1, but instead it seems whoever the director is saw how successful Honkai Star Rail was and tried to tap into that audience with a quick rush job of an update. The way Part 2 was presented had a bunch of people confused in the beginning. Was it a new game? Was it a separate app? Do you need Part 1 to play Part 2? Nobody really knew what they were going for. It got even weirder when Hoyo decided to open pre-registration for it like it was actually a new game. Unfortunately, it had just ended up is like another awful open world chapter with a few minor changes to the game's engine and how the gacha functions. For some reason, the studio has been obsessed with open world gameplay, even though it has always been some of this game's weakest content. Majority of the time, they are just copy pasted flat areas that are just ugly to look at and don't really give you a reason to explore. They are still using the same NPCs from like a year ago, oftentimes completely identical and standing side by side, like everyone in these levels is a twin. It's lazy as hell and brings me to a bigger issue. They went to the Genshin school of side quests instead of the Honkai Star Rail school of side quests for reasons I cannot explain. The side quests in Part 2 are some of the most ChatGPT AI generated dog shit I've ever seen in my life. They've always been bad, but here they really stick out because of the Genshin daily structure and just how generic they are. It's weird when an NPC asks me to go talk to an NPC that is identical to them one to one. There is no way to get invested in these whatsoever. At least in Genshin, some of the minor side quests have multi-part storylines that can somewhat be interesting, while Honkai Star Rail goes a bit further with minor quests to tell a story worth your time. Here, they just kinda bullshit their way into the HSR Genshin club, but beyond the side quests, they decided to add artifact farming for whatever reason. Nobody wants to play Honkai Impact for the Genshin experience. Nobody. Nobody ever has and nobody ever will. On top of that, there's weekly bosses now and just a super piss poor copy of Honkai Star Rail's level design. Like some of the earlier open world areas in this game, there's a jump button, but there's invisible walls everywhere with like tons of gaps between buildings and nothing to really explore or see. This was a big problem with Part 2's predecessor, AFO, or a post-Honkai Odyssey. The levels are open world, but mostly flat with nothing to really see or do, which just wastes the entire mechanic outside of combat. What's the point? And even in combat, being able to jump doesn't change anything other than, ooh, I'm doing combos in the air now, instead of on the ground. And to speak of the combat in Part 2, they haven't really done anything new. They added the Astral Ring system, but it's just a copy of their own Moon Ring system in AFO, which is just buffs and some off-field damage from whoever you run in that slot. They've started adding real people instead of elves as your supporter pets that buff you in specific elements, most likely to make these banners more appealing. I will say the gacha is a bit better now. You still need to rate up character in 4 pieces of gear, a weapon, and 3 stigmata. They've removed off race from the gear banner and lowered max character pity from 100 to 90 as well. They also give you a box that lets you choose 1 stigmata for each new character that releases, and you can craft any pieces you miss with the new material they added. So instead of 4 pieces of gear, you only need 3. And the new weapon is guaranteed to drop at 60 pulls, but even if you don't hit pity, they do have craftable weapons as well. For me, I've always struggled to even get to roll on the gear banner previously. I've been playing for 3 years now and still only have 2 full gear characters with the old banner. With the old banner, if you were crazy unlucky, you would just end up blowing all your pulls on the character banner. I can't say it's much better here since I've already hit hard pity on the banner in Part 2. It is what it is. The gacha has always been one of the weakest aspects of this game since the characters are super gear dependent, some of which are just completely useless without at least having their signature weapon. If you're someone that doesn't care about mana progression like Abyss or Arena in this game, then the gear doesn't really matter. But if you want to climb, you need to at least get their signature weapon and have the latest craftable stigmata or your best pieces if you want to run Rainbow. Just a bunch of random pieces. You can do that. It works. It's fine. I used to spend quite a bit on this game, and out of all of Hoyo's games, it's probably the worst in regards to crystal prices, since you need 280 a pull instead of 160 for HSR and Genshin, so the gacha can be really rough. Again, I wouldn't stress over ranking up in Abyss or Arena, just get what you can. I do think the gacha in its current state is the best it's ever been, but I do wish the gear wasn't as important as it is. So back to the story of part 2, it really did start off pretty good. The game has really been on the decline in writing and story presentation for a really long time now. The last few arcs before part 2 really didn't instill any confidence in the game's future for me. As someone who used to be a super fan of the story, the new trio is about the safest route they could have taken. Coralie is just a sassy Uncle Branya, Helia is just May with a bit more presence, and Cinedina is just Kiana with milkers. That's it. She just has big boobs. I will say the only reason I haven't uninstalled this game right now is thanks to Coralie. As a huge Branya fan, she's cute as hell and is actually pretty funny most of the time, so she fills that Branya void for me at the moment. The start of the new story avoids the big science nonsense that's been ruining the game for a bit. It unfortunately comes back later, which is just a big yikes, but they do a somewhat good job of introducing you to this new world. I do wish they didn't make up new terms for some of the things that are similar but aren't the same, like the Sea of Data and the Sea of Quanta, for example. They also just kinda don't explain what Cinedina is or have anyone question it. It's glossed over very quickly and everyone just becomes buddy-buddy a bit too fast. And the intro is a bit confusing, but with how the story has been going as of late, it'll probably just be some whatever reveal a few years from now. But the best part was the chemistry between everyone was really good. The new cast bounces off each other quite well, but only for the first chapter. This game has always been character driven, so when you take that away and have these bubbly characters watching a boring history recap for 2 hours, it takes away so much value from what they could be doing instead. The new setting is interesting, but not so much that we need to learn the entire history of it over like 3 chapters. To summarize, a group of anti-heroes come together to save the world, which split it in half into 2 separate worlds, one called Axia and one called Lanku. For Axia, Lanku is ancient history, with the set heroes having history books about them and such. While Lanku is aware of Axia, they live separately. Now the disaster that the heroes fought to end is happening again, and our trio has to go around reawakening the heroes of old. On paper, this sounds amazing, and each of the shoes, that's what the heroes are called, have their own personalities and stories, which are really fucking cool. Their designs are amazing, the voice work is insane. Just common Honkai Impact quality in regards to characters, but the game chooses to have their backgrounds explained through flashbacks or copy-pasted NPCs talking to each other about past events that happened years ago. Now, if you can recall what I said at the start of the video, this shit is awful. And it goes on and it ruins any excitement you could have from meeting the new shoes, and only reaches any form of peak fiction when they're on screen. It is some of the most boring shit I've ever read in my life. It's almost at the Genshin level of snooze, but I sat through it because I wanted to see the shoes and learn about them. Unfortunately, it just gets worse and worse, from the first shoe you learn about named Latoast, to shooting old people with Thelema, or Thelma, however you want to say her name. It never picks up, and this is just how they've chosen to tell this story. As of now, I have no hope for this game's future as a story-driven game. The gameplay has never been what anyone talks about. It's repetitive and gets boring crazy fast, regardless of what each new character does. You just do the same combos and party rotations until whatever you're fighting is dead. But the story has had some of the most beautiful moments in gacha history. It used to have some of the most powerful character development I've ever seen in a game. But now I feel like the writers have spent the last year and a half chasing the game's highs and will never reach those peaks again. I will continue to check out each story update simply because Coralie is cute and Thelema is hot. That's all I need to get through some of these chapters. So part 2 as a whole has been a mixed bag. Events are still just mini games copying other games. The new character designs are still as good as ever. The gacha has seen some really good improvements. I would still like to see the pull cost drop to 160, but as of now, I couldn't recommend anyone play purely to see part 2. If you're new to Honkai Impact, 100% give part 1 a try. It's still one of the best stories ever told in a gacha. Up to a point. I won't say when, but you'll notice the drop in quality. But yeah, that's all. Make sure to like and subscribe. I do stream every new patch over at twitch.tv/kingplop when they drop. Thanks for watching.